In this video we'll be unboxing the MH710. So there's a bit of work in putting these together. Pretty well and tightly packaged. So we've removed it all from the box. We can see all the pieces, including the manuals. There's a pile of nuts and bolts here, so we'll help you make some sense of that. So there's a bit of assembly required for the MH710. First we'll start off with assembling the wheels. So we have these shafts that have to go through into here, and we have to fit them to the wheels. There's also some spaces that will be required to fit the wheels. We're only mounting the shaft onto those 4 inside bolts. The outer bolts that you see with nothing to them are purely just to hold the 2 halves of the rim together. Max tyre pressure is said to be 40 psi. Around 20 to 30 psi would be sufficient for normal use and assembly. Now we can fit the covers and the retainers. Now we can fit the tyres. Make sure you got the direction right so you can see which way we've got them here with the tread, and you'll use the locking pin to retain it. Now it's time to fit the front wheel. For that we'll need this flanged bolt, a washer and a nut, all 10mm heads on those, the pin and the clip. You'll see the holes there. So the first thing to do is to put the bolt through, and then it's going to be the clip that goes through into the second hole. Now we can assemble the blade spur. These are the bolts and the nuts, pins and clips that you need, and that will be going on to the back end of the unit here. We can fit the blade spur. And the main locking pin. There's a large retainer clip that can go in. As you can see, there's a series of different holes on the actual main blade spur with the pin that can be used to adjust that height. That helps sort of regulate or control the depth of your cultivation. Also, there's these bolts here with some locking nuts. They're used to help sort of stabilize the main bracket here. You can do the same to help sort of set and stabilize the position of the main blade spur. Next, we can fit the handle. So we have the handle bracket that goes on in place, and you can see the release system that'll have to thread down into there, 16mm thread. There is also a retainer bolt, this interesting looking one here, and that screws in to that location there. Now we can fit the main handle into the handle bracket. We'll have to hold down the adjuster release, and we'll be using 2 of these U-bolts and the appropriate washers and nuts. And the main thing to remember is that we don't over tighten them. They have to be done up nice and firm, but the handle needs to be able to pivot still. Now it's time to fit some of the cables in place. 2 cables in particular. You can see how that one's retained. Pull it up into its keeper. And the other one has a spring, goes through onto the pin there. And then it's put in place as so. Now we can retain all the cables in this cable retainer. And after that, in the kit was a bunch of these cable ties too that we can use to secure the cables where required. Next, we fit the orange cover plate. There's 3 screws that hold it in. All have a Torx 20 driver. Next we fit the front transport handle. There's 4 longer bolts. What's a little unusual about this one is that the handle has to go in here. You can see the engine already has bolts. We have to remove these bolts. There's 4 of them all up, and that's where these longer bolts come into play. So keep the washers and the nuts. You'll be reusing those, but you'll be replacing the longer bolts as we fit the transport handle in place. Next we'll fit the guards. We'll start off with using these brackets here. We need 4 of the bolts and washers. These little brackets mount down on the underside between the engine and gearbox in here. It's a good idea just to put these up finger tight to start with, because that'll help us align it a little better when we put all the guards on, and then we can tighten them up after. The next bracket we need to fit is this one here. We'll need these 2 larger 10mm bolts, the washers and the nuts, and that one will come through to the back and the bracket will go in place, something like that. Next we fit the guards. So we have all these 8 bolts, washers and nuts, and the guard will come over onto the brackets that we've just mounted. Next we can fit the top hood, so you'll see the clips that go in place there. You'll also see that this has a headlight, so there's a power cable that needs to be connected, and then clips down on top. In the box, 1 full set of tines is assembled, but one of them is in 2 pieces. So the last remaining bolts to deal with, a longer bolt with a washer, spring washer and nut, and you can see where they'll go through. The MH710 comes dry, so with no oil in the engine, and there's no oil inside the gearbox, and we can see that's noted with these yellow tags saying that oil needs to be put in before running it up. The oil, all outlined in the different manuals. So in the actual engine manual, we have a capacity of 600 mils, 0.6 litres, and the SAE30 or 10W30 oils are both fine, so you can see the recommended temperature ranges there. With the gearbox and the actual manual here, we have 2.3 litres of the SAE 10W30 oil. You'll see that the air filter has it as well, because it's an oil bath filter that requires oil. So you can see there an oil level to filter. It'll be just below that washer. You can also, if need be, take the foam filter out and just squeeze a light bit of oil into that. It doesn't have to be too excessive. So here we are set up with the transport wheels, but we'll show you through the fitting of the tines. You'll notice that there's a left hand there and a right hand there. Obviously important that you get those around. So tip it up, the pin out, wheel off, and it's a pretty simple, straightforward exercise of sliding the tines in place, and then the pin goes back in. To fit it into the actual tilling mode, now we can remove the front wheel, which is just simply pull the pin, pull it out, and the whole front wheel comes out, and there we have it. That's how we go about doing the actual cultivating or tilling.